Yeah, I know you are a believer that little green men were floating around above us.
And, Barack is talking about this situation wrong. And Jaden says, "Excuse me, Mr. President." And I was like, "Hey, Barack, man, hey, listen, Jaden. And Barack said, "Don't tell me." And in perfect form, like, this is why he's the president, he stopped and looked at Jaden and said, "The aliens, right?" And I was like, "Oh, shoot." And he said, "Okay, I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of extraterrestrials, but I can tell you if there had been a top secret meeting, and if there would have had to have been a discussion about it, it would have taken place in this room."
You're listening to Canary Cry Radio. Now here are your hosts, Basil and Gonz.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening again to Canary Cry Radio. Thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in from YouTube or iTunes or Revelations Radio Network or your RSS feed or whatnot. My name is Basil.
And I'm Gonz, and this is our 10th episode. So we were going to try something a little different. We're going to list off 10 compelling, interesting UFO videos, UFO and alien related footage that we kind of scoured YouTube and came up with a list of 10, and certainly there's a lot more than 10, and it's pretty difficult to try to dwindle it down and make a list of 10, but we kind of refined the list that we had before, and
there's some ones that I think need to be talked about. We need to have a little talk about some of these.
We need to have this conversation now because obviously, this is really important stuff. But before we jump in, just wanted to remind you that we have a guest for our next episode.
Yeah.
And it's none other than the great L.A. Marzulli, which I know some of you guys are familiar with. And we're really excited to have L.A. on, so stay tuned for that and make sure you catch that episode in the future here.
Next week. Episode 11.
But yeah, do you want to jump in, Basil? You want to go through these videos?
Yeah, sure. I mean, okay, so a lot of these videos, these aren't secret videos that me and Gonz broke into secret government databases and found that nobody has ever seen before. They're simply off of YouTube. They're videos that maybe you've seen before if you've gone looking for UFO videos on YouTube. But nonetheless, a lot of them are very compelling, and there's a lot of controversy around a lot of them, or most of them actually, because there's always the naysayers, and it's kind of funny to hear the official story on some of these. But I guess we'll just jump right in. We tried to put these in some sort of order, some sort of top 10 order, but it's kind of hard. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that these are in no particular order, but I guess we can just get started. Oh, and by the way, if you're listening to us on your iPod or whatever, go ahead and listen and enjoy. But if you're interested in watching the videos, we'll post them all in the show notes so you can watch them all while you're listening or whatnot, and so you can kind of get that visual along with the show.
Yeah, and we were talking about how with, as we were tossing around an idea for this show, we were like, oh, let's do a top 10 list of UFO videos, and we're like, yeah, and then we realized that we're going to have to actually, describe what's happening in these videos, and so, our limited linguistic skills won't be as compelling as actually watching the videos themselves. So we'll have all of these in the show notes, and hopefully you guys can check them out, and hopefully we'll have them embedded, so you can just click play on the UFO, or sorry, the YouTube clips that we'll have on the show notes, and check them out. But anyway, First footage, the Jerusalem UFO.
Yeah, this one's really interesting. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this one, but it's let's see, I'm gonna play it here so I can watch it. But yeah, basically it's just some footage of looking out over Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock is kind of there in the middle of this, massive lights that is Jerusalem. It's at nighttime, and way up in the sky you see this light, this ball of light, just chilling there. But then suddenly it starts dropping at a rate which would be pretty fast considering the scope of the shot there.
Right.
And it drops down, I don't know, probably a mile out of the sky.
Yeah.
And just starts hovering right over the Dome of the Rock and just chills there. It's just sitting there for, I don't know, it feels like forever, but it's probably about 20 seconds or something. And then, and the video we post here, it has 3 different angles. 3 different people were shooting this at the same time.
There's actually 4, I guess, official videos that caught this event. But the particular video we're linking to has 3.
Right.
But yeah, once it hangs there for a while, it has a flash, and then it shoots up into the sky real fast.
It's so strange. It's sitting there, and then it flashes, but the flash isn't necessarily coming from the craft.
Right.
The flash or the UFO, the flash is happening what seems like on the ground. Or
Right.
the area, it seems like there's some sort of interaction between the UFO and the ground, or the ground and the UFO, and it's really, really strange. And then immediately after this happens, it just shoots up into the sky at an incredible rate, and it's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, and then once it's in the sky, there's some pulsating lights, kind of in a formation, if you will, and it's very strange. It's very compelling to just look at, and a lot of people have suggested that this is a fake, that it's CGI, it's a grand hoax. 4 videos capturing the same event,
Right.
but. It's at least worth talking about. And a lot of these videos, we can't say for sure that this is absolute evidence. And, Basil was...
Well, I mean, come on, people. This is 2012. Any kid with After Effects can go in and,
Right.
at least try to fake a UFO video.
Right.
So we understand that things can be faked. And not to say that that's not important to think that things can be faked, but... it's also important to have a little bit of faith in some sort of truth, that something does exist on film somewhere in the world. There
Right.
is such thing as genuine footage nowadays. Just keep that in mind.
And the thing that we have to remember is that just one of these footages being real means that there's something going on. So
Right.
even if 300 million of them are all fake, and one is real, then we have to consider the reality of the implications of having craft or spaceships or whatever these things are existing.
Right.
And
So let's get back to the video here. Now, I think one really compelling thing about this is that it's happening over the Dome of the Rock,
Right.
would you say? Right. And this has a lot of implications regarding, the connections between... the end times and aliens perhaps being demons or something like this, and the Antichrist being involved with this sort of thing. And to have this over the Dome of the Rock is actually a particularly interesting piece of information that makes this certain video more interesting to me. Now, I believe this was from last year. This was really
it was
early.
January 2011.
Yeah, January 2011. So, it's just, and the flashes that could be happening on the ground, there's so many possibilities as to what that could be. And then it leaving right after the flashes. So that tells me that whatever it was there for happened in those flashes.
Right.
And once the mission was accomplished, it takes off or whatever. This is just me assuming it is, a craft doing something. It could really be anything. Maybe it's a angel or something, but
Right. But
whatever it is, after the flashes seem to be what needed to happen, and then it takes off.
Right. And one of the things that's interesting about the video is that, again, it's over the Dome of the Rock, and that the Muslims are waiting for the Imam Mahdi. They're waiting for their version of the savior. Right. And if you know anything about some speculations about the Antichrist from a Christian perspective, it seems to line up interestingly with someone like the Mahdi coming and being that Antichrist, but to the rest of the world, having this person be the savior. And also, when you look at Benjamin Creme and Maitreya and the world savior, the world teacher, and some of the quotes made by Benjamin Creme about, well, the UFO crafts are controlled by Maitreya, and when he appears, he will appear with his fleet of UFOs or whatever.
Right.
So it all kind of ties together. And of course, the controversy of having it be where it is in Jerusalem, just, I think it just brings so much speculation amongst the people that are into this kind of thing, whether it's real or not. And at the same time, if it is a hoax, it's a great place to create the hoax because it does create those conversations.
Yeah.
So,
well, here was another interesting thing that I thought about along the hoax line. And I'm thinking maybe the videos may not be a hoax, but think about this for a second. Think about this occurrence in the context of Project Bluebeam.
Right.
Now, perhaps one possibility could be that this was an operation carried out by Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam being a sort of device or weapon or whatever it is to make peoples of a region think that God has come or something like that. Sort of like a mass, not hallucination, but just,
it would just be a deception.
Oddity. Yeah, a mass oddity to think that.
Right.
And they've done it decades in the past. They were experimenting with this. But now think if the U.S. government or some other government wanted to make the people of Jerusalem and of Israel think that a savior has come, or any sort of thing like that. Some sort of occurrence happened over the Dome of the Rock. Could really be a number of things. And it would just be the perfect sort of thing that a government would want to set off some sort of disturbance within a population.
Yeah.
And so that did occur to me, that could be something, I don't know if our government has the technology to make something like this happen in real life where people could see it. But it is another way to look at the situation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely check it out if you've never seen this video. If you're listening to this podcast, you've most likely come across probably all this footage.
It's one of my favorite pieces of footage. And one interesting thing is it has all the different angles, but one angle is from like some tourists who are speaking English. Another angle is like, you can tell they're Israelis.
Right.
And so it's like it comes from a few different things, or they did a good job of making it look like it came from a couple different places.
Right. And allegedly it happened in the middle of the night, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So there's not going to be a whole lot of people around to see it. I think the question's still up in the air, whether it's real or not, but it's fun to speculate, and it's compelling footage. It's one of many.
And whether or not it is real, there are a lot of implications that come out of this sort of footage being publicized.
Yeah. So let's move on. Let's continue on, because I think the key points, the common thread to all of this footage will become apparent as we go through them. But we don't want to spill all our beans on the first one. Number 9 is, and I wish we had like a little sound thing that does the countdown, but
number 9.
There you go. You're the sound guy then.
Okay.
The second one is a very popular piece of footage from Mexico. It's a UFO fleet. And this one, I guess, was attempted to be debunked on a show called Fact or Faked on the Sci-Fi Channel. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It's basically kind of a jittery piece of film from 2004 in Mexico. Or sorry, not Mexico. It's Guadalajara. Or no, it is Mexico.
Guadalajara,
Mexico. Okay. And basically this person's filming the sky. You see the clouds, and you see what appears to be several hundred balls of light, all moving in the same direction together. Go ahead.
Sorry, but that was a technical difficulty.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. So it appears to be moving in the same direction, sort of in uniform, although it's kind of scattered about. And
it's hard to tell because it's pretty shaky footage.
Yeah, it's very shaky footage. Where what I find interesting is there's a part at the end where it zooms into one piece of, or one ball of light, or what it's alleged to be a ball of light, and it's kind of hard to tell what it is. The different theories on this one has been, it's a flock of birds, although it doesn't really. I don't think it's birds.
Yeah,
I've heard it's balloons, and the one thing that Factor Faked did, which I thought was interesting, was they actually went to a pool. I believe it was a pool, and they filmed it from a 10-meter platform, a diving platform, 10 meters off the ground, and just straight, the camera angled straight down to the water, and they had smoke go across the top of the water, and that was supposed to be the clouds. And then they had these like little eggs or something like float across, and it just didn't work. It didn't look right.
Oh, they thought maybe somebody was faking it by shooting a pool or something?
Yeah, that was their theory. And after that failed, they released like hundreds of balloons into the air, and that was closer, but you can definitely tell that when they're balloons, they kind of they're jittery, they kind of move around.
I don't buy that at all. Balloons would not stay in formation. I mean, you look at these things, and they stay at the same distance away from each other.
Yeah, they don't run into each other either.
They're not flying around. They're not moving, which is why the birds don't make any sense to me either. I mean, obviously they're not birds. Birds aren't circular. But, I mean, it's just really hard. And you hear... This is one thing that bothers me about people who are, I don't want to say debunking, but people who are naysayers about these types of things.
Ardent skeptics.
Yeah, because it's just so easy to just say, oh, it's balloons. And then they just say it like it's fact. But you look at it, and to me, in my eyes, there's no way that this is thousands of balloons released.
Right.
First of all, if there was thousands of balloons released, you would have seen them going into the air. It would have been a big deal. You don't just nobody just misses thousands of balloons rising into the air and just happens to post it on YouTube, and there's not thousands of people saying oh no, those are just balloons because it was a quinceañera or something. But anyways, getting back to the video, you look at it and it's really interesting. He does zoom into one of the things. Right. And it does sort of seem to have a craft-like quality to it, Yeah,
kind of a semi-disc shape.
Sort of a discus shape, and there's shadows coming across it that make it look like there's some, it's not just a sphere. It's got some sort of...
there's some texture there.
Texture to the craft, or the UFO, I said.
Yeah, I remember Factor Faked looked at it and said, that was a cluster of balloons. Like, these other ones are individual balloons, and he zoomed into a cluster of balloons. Right. And maybe, I don't know, but it's balloons just don't act this way. They don't.
That's the thing is you look at the footage, and the clouds are moving.
Yeah, so it's in the sky.
Well, there's clouds moving because there's wind.
Right. And
what you see, you look at these things, and they're not moving around. They're just stationary.
Yeah.
So.
And it looks like. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just gonna say I'm prone to believe that these are not balloons. They're not birds. They're something that is able to hang around when there's high wind.
Yeah. The other thing is that it's so high up in the air. If you released balloons, why would they sit, some, I don't know how far up it is, but 300 feet, or probably a lot more than that actually. Let's say, 1,000 feet in the air, and the other ones are 500 feet in the air. They wouldn't spread out like that and stay stationary as they move across the sky. Right. They would be, some would probably be moving up higher. They would be, again, I just think there's way too many unknowns to say conclusively that it's not UFOs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, well, what could it be then? What else could it be than perhaps a fleet of ships, you know? So.
Yeah. Very interesting. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely check that one out. That one for me, that was one of the footages that I remember seeing for the first time thinking, whoa, that is really weird.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something everyone should check out if you haven't seen it already.
Right. This next one is a piece of footage from Turkey. It is of a saucer, and it's interesting. This is a unique piece of footage for me because it's shot both at night and in the morning.
As the sun comes up.
As the sun is coming up. And there are times when, the thing is a light in the sky, like a classic light in the sky. But you see also that there are times when the craft or the UFO has no lights on it.
Right, and it's the moon reflecting its light off of it that makes it visible.
But you can see the craft, and the moon is reflecting off the top of it, and so this is no longer a mysterious light in the sky case. This is an actual something hovering in the sky, being a lot more conspicuous than or inconspicuous than its normal light in the sky brethren. And it's interesting because the guy who's shooting actually, he zooms in pretty far.
He goes pretty far in, yeah.
He's got a pretty nice camera. I know there's an explanation of the camera there on the types of zooms that he has, and he tries to not do the optical zoom,
right,
or the digital zoom or whatever. He tries to use just the real zoom for the most of the part, and it's really interesting to take a look at. What do you think, Gonz?
Well, it's I know I believe Roger Lear, who Dr. Roger Lear, who's sick right now actually, so hopefully he gets better. He's the one that pulled out implants from people's bodies, and he was completely a skeptic against any kind of possibility of there being UFOs or aliens or anything like that until he had a very thorough investigation of human body implants. So he was actually at this, I believe he saw this in person, and he was at this filming. So what I find compelling is that in that zoom, when it zooms in really close to the craft is in a state of not having its lights on, I guess you can say. It's not a ball of light. It's clearly the reflection of the moonlight off of it, and the people who filmed it claim to have seen the occupants of this craft, which is very interesting because it's kind of hard to tell on the video, and obviously, if you're there, you're going to have a much better sense of what was going on. But nevertheless, I mean, to be able to claim that you saw humanoids or, occupants of a craft is very unique. And to actually have it on video, because a lot of it is just, people's testimonies and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's different when you have it.
It's really interesting. I'm not sure exactly about the testimony of how they saw the occupants, but when he zooms in, it's really interesting because you can see in the center of the craft, there's a sort of cockpit-looking area.
Yeah, like a pit, or a little dip.
Like a part, because you see the moonlight, it's shining off the top of the craft, and it's glistening off of the smooth metal surface on both sides of the disc. But right in the middle of the disc, there's this darker part that the moon is not necessarily glistening off of. So it sort of gives the effect of maybe that's where whoever is controlling the thing is sitting in, or I can't really get a good idea for the size of this thing, whether it's a one humanoid piloted craft or if it's big enough for a few to be in there. But it's really, really compelling nonetheless.
And I believe this footage, the link that we'll have in the post in the show notes is part one of, I guess, 2 or 3 different sections, and these guys captured this on more than one occasion. They captured it between the months of it was between 07 and 08. It was May, June, and July of 2008 where they caught this over and over and over again.
Right.
So again, you know, it's not just one time; it's multiple times. And
let's talk about when it gets to the morning too.
Yeah. Once the sun starts coming out, you can still see it, and I believe this is the actual footage in June, but it becomes, you can see the lights of the craft, and I don't think this specific video has that actually. I'm gonna have to find that one.
It does.
It does? Okay.
Yeah.
So once the sun comes up, you can see
it's barely dusk. I mean, you can tell these guys were out here for hours trying to take a look at this thing, which I think is another part of this video that makes it that much more authentic. You know, these guys didn't just see a UFO and it disappeared and it's gone. This was hours and hours of them sitting out there watching this thing.
Right. And so you can, when you look at the craft without the lights and in that zoom in thing that we were talking about a second ago, you can see kind of where the lights might be, and when the sun starts coming up, that's when you see those lights come on. Like, you see the craft from afar with, I think it's like 3 or 4 different lights, and it's just very interesting. And so one of the skeptical claims that I heard about this footage was that, it's just the mast of a cruise ship, which is really funny
silly.
because if you look at pictures of cruise ships, it's like, when does only the top of the cruise ship light up and the rest of it stays dark?
It's just silly. And that's just this thing with these critics. You know, I'm fine with being critics. We should all be very critical of these videos that we watch. You know, being critical of the things that you're taking in and the things that you're believing is probably the number one skill that somebody needs to be able to do if they're going to be looking at UFO footage, if they're looking at the occult, if they're looking at, you know, things like that. You need to be able to be critical in your own mind. But to just it's just silly to just say things like, that's the mast of a cruise ship.
Right.
I don't know what you guys are freaking out. It's a mast of a cruise ship. It's just nonsense, and it's just, you know. Anyways.
Yeah, and plus it's if it's a cruise ship, it is a ginormous cruise ship, because that thing is pretty high off the water. I mean, and how far it is away, it would have to be like the super duper Titanic. You know, it would just have to be just ridiculously big.
The super duper Titanic.
And I think they would know. If the people filming it would be like, you know what, we wasted our time. It's a cruise ship. I think they would figure that out.
It's not even worth the conversation.
Yeah.
To talk about the cruise ship. But, all right, I guess we should move on.
All right, let's move on. Number 7.
Make sure to check that one out, everybody.
That was number 8, and now we're on number 7.
All right, number 7, we have some NASA footage. You know, NASA just has tons and tons and tons of footage hinting towards extraterrestrials or UFOs or whatever they might be. So, I mean, you could just spend hours sifting through all the footage that you can get from them. But we picked out one that we liked especially. So it'll be there in the show notes there. And it's around second 45, I think it is.
That's 45 seconds in.
45 seconds in. And it's... I think it's a satellite or something, or this is taken from a space shuttle in 1996, or actually it was deployed in 1996. But as you watch the video footage, around 45 seconds, what you're going to see on the left side of the screen is this craft come into view and make a 90 degree, or almost 90 degree, probably 80 degree turn in mid-space. And, you know, space debris and comets and whatever, they don't do that. They don't make 80 degree turns. Well, that's the interesting thing, is that you have a few different pieces of light flying around in this piece of footage. You have a few things happening. And then you have one that looks like all the others, but then it suddenly takes this turn with no apparent cause. So first of all, it makes you, is this the same as the rest of the objects flying around? Are these all sort of the same thing cruising around, and this one just happened to give itself away by making that change in direction?
Right.
Or are these other things flying around actual pieces of debris, and then just happen to be one that looks exactly the same that is a UFO? Or is it a piece of debris that somehow changed direction? You know, I don't know that much about space, but what I think I know about space is that things don't change direction for no reason.
Right.
So that's what makes this piece of footage especially compelling. What do you think there, Gonz?
Well, okay. There's a couple things. You know, as someone that swam a lot, I was a competitive swimmer. I got to be in the water all the time, and underwater, when I watch the footage of outer space, it reminds me of underwater. I don't know why. It just does. Just the way things move. You know, gravity just works a little differently, or you know, not at all. And so when you watch the footage and you see something make a turn that is that dramatic, it's got to have some kind of different propulsion or something, because in water to make a stop turn like that is almost nearly impossible.
Well, yeah, that was another interesting thing about it, is that there's no loss of momentum or anything like that. You know, if it was an object that maybe bounced off of something else, or maybe it collided with another object and sent it into this other direction, there would be some sort of change in momentum, or some sort of just some sort of evidence of that it came in contact with another object.
Yeah.
And that just simply isn't here in this footage, which makes it especially interesting. Okay, Gonz, you know exactly what planet, or is that the moon, or what is that on the right side there?
I think it's just Earth, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so it's Earth. So there's Earth on the right side of the screen, and you can tell there's just whizzing by. They're just kind of hanging out in orbit, it looks like. And so this thing is relatively close to Earth. And so I just don't see... and that's another thing with NASA, is that NASA, quote-unquote, tracks every piece of space debris.
Yeah.
And so...
And what's funny is a lot of times when you watch the footage, they have the audio with it of the people that are monitoring these videos. And you sometimes hear them talk like, oh, that there was, you know, they kind of have this language of like, they can't say, well, that was a spaceship, you know, but they'll say things like, well, that was strange, or completely ignore it.
Right.
There's one footage that we won't include in the actual show notes, but if you do enough digging, you'll find it. It's literally, it's so obvious. It's like this disc-shaped thing, and they're sitting there talking about, oh, it's kind of metallic. Never seen anything like it before, and...
It's interesting to hear these guys talk about it. And even in the case of the moon missions.
Yeah.
In the moon missions, the astronauts would see something strange, or they would be followed by some sort of craft. And they talk about it later, but you hear the audio from their transmissions, and they sort of talk in these funny little codes, asking questions that are sort of superfluous, asking like where the boosters are. When they know that the boosters are 6,000 miles away, but they're just saying that to alert Houston that
mission
there's
control,
something oddly close to us, and it's making me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
So anyways, a lot of NASA footage. Check it out. 45 seconds into this video that we'll be posting on the show notes.
All right, so number 6. We're going to fly through these, or not. I don't know.
We'll try.
We're going to UFO through these. Number 6 is actually a CNN footage of, it's kind of a collection of UFO footage, but the reason why we linked this one in particular is because it has footage of an alleged craft crashing, and what it does is it's kind of a disc-shaped object that's glowing. It comes down, it skips off the ground as if you're skipping, you know, a piece of rock off water, and then it comes down to the ground again, and it explodes.
Right. It's super interesting. One of my favorite pieces of footage. I know I might have said that before, but just so you know what's happening in this compilation here, due to the Freedom of Information Act from a few years ago, people have been requesting information about UFOs from the government in the attempt to legally obtain, evidence for UFOs.
Right.
And what you'll hear with the people talking and Larry King and Nick Pope and everybody is what the government just got tired of doing all the paperwork. So basically they've, I don't know if it's technically declassified, but they've sort of released big bunches of videos and things that have been collected by the government just because it's their biggest request under the Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
And there's questions about could they be fake? Could the government be releasing them in order to sort of ease the public into some sort of disclosure or something like that? But anyways, despite all of the politics that may surround this footage, anyways, what is it? It's around second 20 seconds in ish. It's sort of the pinkish clip that they show, and it's just the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's a disc-shaped craft or UFO flying along. Suddenly, it smashes into the ground and sort of skips up, kind of like Gonz said, a stone or like a quarter or something. When you skip it across a fountain or something, and it goes up and it's airborne for a few more seconds, kind of flying. You can see it flies past some sort of tower or military tower or something, and then it just comes smashing back down to Earth and just explodes into so many pieces. And there's also the things about it. It could be some sort of experimental military craft or things like this, but it's definitely something you're going to want to check out.
Right. And I think what's interesting about it is that it shows how a lot of the speculations about the government trying to replicate or duplicate these crafts allegedly from extraterrestrials, which I believe it's not necessarily extraterrestrials from other planets, but in any case, the technology that they've been imparted, they're trying to make it their own.
Right.
And I believe to some degree, we do have crafts that are much more advanced than we can ever imagine. And I believe personally that these crafts are out there, and this could be footage of a test of the craft, seeing how it works and whatnot. And,
right.
And the critique on that particular footage that I've heard is that, it was just a missile test.
A missile that accidentally didn't explode the first time it hit the ground.
Right, and then even when it did explode, it didn't really explode. It just kind of shattered.
Yeah, that was something that I wanted to bring up was when it explodes, I say explode, but it does not explode into flames or some sort of explosion like that. What happens to it basically is it disintegrates into just 1,000 tiny pieces that sort of go flying, but there's no actual flames or explosion. Now, this is, at least in my mind, this is really goes along with a lot of the other accounts of these UFOs being made of, materials that we don't necessarily use, and they don't use fuel. They use some sort of energy modification sort of type.
From the aether.
Right. They kind of take their energy from the aether, and there's no jets or anything like that. So that's what makes this, to me, especially interesting, is that it does not explode. And then another thing is when it hits the ground, when it's skipping off of the ground, it doesn't just skip. It doesn't just skip and then sort of just peter out. You can tell it skips, it kind of wobbles, regains its ability to propel itself, and then continues off into the air before finally coming back down again. Now, that was a part that I watched over and over because I just thought it was so interesting. It's not flying through the air again. It's not like this was launched by something. This has its own sort of ability to propel itself, hits the ground, loses control for just a second, then you can see it stabilizes itself and takes off again, and before finally coming down and meeting a very scattered end.
Yeah, and if there was somebody in that craft,
Yeah,
they're probably not going to make it.
That's a bad day for him.
Yeah.
Or her.
Or her, yeah.
So yeah, okay. And in this video, it's about 6.5, 7 minutes long of a bunch of different footage and a bunch of quote unquote experts talking about it. And it's just funny. The naysayers are just, it's the same attitude. I think it might be the attitude of the naysayers that just makes it silly.
Yeah.
But anyways, take a look at that. Super interesting.
That one is interesting. And Nick Pope, who's interviewed there, has been a really big proponent of UFO disclosure in the UK. I believe he was in. Don't quote me on this. I know he was a big part of the military in the UK as part of the intelligence there, and he has come out and he's been a whistleblower trying to gain attention about this stuff. But maybe we'll do a thing on Nick Pope one day. He does come out and say a lot, so
yeah,
very interesting stuff. But let's move on. Number 5, we have.
This one's great.
This one's awesome, and we wanted to try to get a variety of footage, not just lights in the sky, because there's tons of footage of like, oh, look at that light in the sky. Right. It could be, whatever. It could be the moon or something. But this next one is a cloaked UFO next to Mercury.
Yeah, and some of you might have seen this one before. It was released by NASA, I think late last year, I believe. And what it is it's a shot of Mercury and then some solar flares coming off of the sun. And tell us what's happening here.
So basically what you see is Mercury in the shot, and to the right is the sun. And the sun has a huge CME, which is a coronal mass ejection. And as it hits Mercury, to the right of Mercury, so in between the blast and Mercury, a little object appears, almost as if the flare, the mass ejection, sort of revealed the object that was there. And it was cloaked before, but then when this mass thing hit it, it kind of, exposed itself.
Yeah, I mean, we say little thing because it's a little thing on the
screen, but yeah, in reality,
it's quite large considering you have Mercury right next to it, and it's at least half the size of Mercury, which in itself is not very big in a comparison to other objects in the cosmos, but still a large craft, and it seems to be hiding.
Yeah.
Behind Mercury. If you were to ask me what this thing is doing here, first of all, it seems to be cloaked because it's not there. It's kind of like a Klingon bird of prey sort of cloaking thing.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that seems to be what's happening. And it's on the sun side of Mercury.
Right.
So it's almost as if, it's hanging there, and it's kind of like it's hanging there, maybe hiding from Earth or doing something. That's just my speculation, but it's fun to think about. But yeah, and this massive coronal mass ejection from the sun just comes blowing through the area. It's quite intense to see the sort of power that the sun can just spray out at any moment.
Yeah.
And then it's so interesting to watch how you can tell it just sort of messes with whatever is cloaking it. It's almost like an EMP will sort of just like bug things out, and that's the sort of same energy that'll be coming from this coronal mass ejection. And it even sort of looks like a craft of some kind.
Yeah, it's got kind of a cylindrical, like a cigar-ish shape to it. And if you've ever seen, like, let's say you bury something in the sand, like a tube or something in the sand, and you dump water on it, and the sand kind of, reveals as the water moves the sand away, it reveals the object. It's kind of like that. It doesn't just pop up.
Right.
It kind of gradually exposes itself, which is why, if it is a craft that's losing its ability to cloak itself because of this ejection, that's how it would operate in theory.
Right.
It wouldn't just kind of pop into existence. It would actually have a washing over and a slow revealing kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the naysayers on this too. I'm trying to think here. There's a video. I don't know if we'll post it or not. Maybe we will. Of some experts, quote unquote, talking about it online, and it's just again, I don't know. Tell us about it, Connie.
Well, basically, this guy comes out. This is the Canadian newsroom, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that, actually. Maybe not. No, maybe this is American. Oh, this is Fox News. I'm sorry. It's Fox News, and, this guy comes out and says, NASA video captures what looks like an alien spaceship. And then this guy comes on, this guy named Tom Jones, which is already kind of suspicious. He comes out and he's just pretty much says like, oh, it's just a visual phenomenon that happened in the processing of the footage, and it's nothing supernatural or extraterrestrial or anything like that. And the way he kind of tries to prove this is he shows a stereo image, is the way he describes it, of the emission, the sun emission coming from the other side of the planet. And then he says, oh, look, see, now when you do that, the glow comes from the other side of the planet. So it's inconsistent. Therefore, it can't be a spaceship. But I mean, there's so many questions. It doesn't make any
sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, okay. First off, do you have a stereo? I mean, is a satellite on the other side of the exact same place filming this, or there's just way too many questions and way too speculative to just suggest, oh, look at this other footage.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost insulting the way that he comes by and tries to explain this thing, because. First of all, he doesn't give anything about what it could be. It's just some phenomenon of imaging and imaging, quirk or something.
Right.
And then he shows. Again, I don't understand. I don't know if they had another satellite on the other side of Mercury, but I mean, it seems like this would be a very specific time to have two satellites millions and millions and millions and millions of miles away from each other, pointed at the same thing, and catching two different but oddly similar things. Because I don't have the other footage right in front of me, but it's just hogwash. Take a look at it. I mean, who am I to say? But make your own decisions. But no matter what, this is a very interesting piece of footage, and sort of a little bit eerie, because if indeed this was a Klingon bird of prey cloaked behind Mercury, why is he hiding? Or what else is hiding behind some other things? So
yeah, and this again, we mentioned the size of this thing. This thing would be huge, absolutely huge. It would be like the Death Star. It would have like a whole civilization of people, or whatever, extraterrestrials or whatever, that are living on this thing. And you start kind of wondering about, like, okay, all those people that have channeled, like, Sananda, the space commander, and all these guys that talk about, we are the Galactic Federation of Light, and we are currently, outside of your solar system. We have some ships in the solar system, and we're keeping a watch on Earth, and all this stuff. I mean, it kind of begs the question of, like, okay, well, do they have something there, or is it still a mass deception that is true, but it's still a deception in the sense that, what was that? Was it a motorcycle or something?
That was a motorcycle, sorry.
Okay. Sounded like something else from over here, but
I'm being abducted.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation on itself, that whole deception with channeling extraterrestrials and things like that, and whether that's more of a metaphysical deception or what, which, I mean, I think we can agree on. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
anyways,
we wanted to include this one because it's not just outer space of stuff floating around. It's actually fairly compelling in that it actually looks at a planet. You see the size of this thing. There's different, just a difference in perspective, I suppose, of the UFO phenomenon that we experience and we see, not just lights in the sky, but again, different footage to show the different flavors of UFO footage.
Right. Right. All right. I guess we'll move on here.
Yeah.
Okay. This next one, I have to read you this. Hold on. All right. Just so everybody knows, we didn't choose these pieces of footage based on their YouTube title. So when you hear the YouTube title of this one, don't think that this had any weight in us choosing this one. But here it is. This one is Amazing UFO Footage, 100% real undeniable evidence.
All right.
So there you go. That's the facts.
That's actually what I typed into the search, and that's what I was searching for. Amazing UFO footage, real undeniable evidence.
We're very skilled researchers over here. No, okay. So, anyways, this one's fun. This is a fun one. It starts out. This is actually interesting in that it has some. It sort of gets more intense as it goes along.
Yeah, this one's really
starts
weird.
out. This is in Russia, March 7th. It shows here a dot of light falling from the sky, and then suddenly this dot starts having a red trail come from it.
Right.
And then that evolves into sort of this big white trail.
Right.
And then it just gets more intense. And then there's a triangle of lights that sort of are surrounding the front of this sort of humongous glowing white, stream of emissions, or just a tail, or sort of like a comet's tail. And then it comes all the way down after getting so intense, and it sort of blooms out like a flower.
Yeah.
And the tail sort of dissipates into this giant plume of, I don't know, it almost looks like some sort of nebulous gas or something.
Yeah.
But then right in the middle, you still have the dot of light, but the streams of gas that are coming off of it gives it a very, like, morning star, almost like an angelic feeling of how this works.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's an angel, but it's a very, very interesting looking occurrence at the very end of this. And then it sort of zooms out and it shows the trail above it is kind of dissipating into this cloud-like substance. But what do you think about this one?
This one's really interesting because I think, first off, again, you went through all the stages, of it going, I don't know, it kind of just like transforms a few times and it gets lighter and then it goes into a small ball and then it goes again into a big ball and with the huge trail. But what I find interesting is, again, at the end, that pluming out and if you kind of,
it seems to be sort of hovering there after it plumes.
Yeah, and the first thing I thought of when I saw this, strangely enough, whether there's any credence to this or not, was a serpent. Because what it looks like, or at least, what it appears to look like, is the head of a snake with the body trailing behind it as the kind of smoke plume that it left behind. And because of the nature of the front end here of this dot and the way it, I don't know how to really describe it, the way it kind of like curls out from that spot makes it appear to look like a serpent-like face, if you can.
Right. And even like I was saying before, using the language of pluming out at the end, I mean, you could totally see how an ancient culture would see this thing.
Yeah.
And see it as a feathered snake.
Feathered snake or a dragon or something like that.
It's that sort of thing. And the way that it comes down and it sort of plumes out and just hangs out there, leaving this sort of just magnificent trail or snake tail or dragon body or whatever, would definitely cause quite a stir in the ancient world. Now, one thing I want to point it out in the beginning is that it starts out sort of with the average sort of red flaming tail that you would expect from like a meteorite or something coming into the atmosphere. But then you see it sort of peters out. It sort of, something happens. It goes through some sort of stage while falling through, and the tail disappears. And it sort of blinks, and it sort of, you can see it almost kind of changes shape or something. There's some other boosters that sort of shoot out from the side or something like that. Then it's just simply that one little dot again.
Yeah.
Then that one dot starts giving that long red trail, which turns into the long white trail.
Right.
Which then turns into the humongous white trail.
Right.
And then it just... that was another amazing part, was after it sort of has this big white...
it almost looks like smoke.
Right, I think it is. It looks like it's some sort of smoke. But after this big white trail is coming out of it, you see on different sides of it, there
the
is
light's flashing.
A triangle of light.
Yeah.
Around the head of this thing. Now, the triangles of light is a huge motif with UFOs. Thousands of videos show this sort of, three lights in the shape of a triangle, usually gliding through the sky or something like that. Well, now we have one, seems to be entering into, and there's been talk about these triangles of light sort of being a cloaking device or something for whatever's in the middle. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's hugely interesting that once this thing starts to slow down or try to slow down, that this triangle of lights appear right before it starts to plume out into this just magnificent phenomenon that is just so compelling.
Yeah,
it almost looks like a bulb of a flower or something like that.
Yeah. And if our, I guess, theory is correct in that a lot of supposing that these things are real, are entities or craft of entities who reside in a different dimension, essentially a spiritual world, manifesting into the physical world, then those, the overlap there, what would it look like if something that is essentially invisible or from the spiritual world were to manifest or materialize into our realm? It would look CGI. It would look fake. Right. But obviously this footage, it can't be faked. I don't think there's any way that this could be.
I would think that anything could be faked. I saw Transformers. I saw, Avatar. Some crazy things can be faked.
That's true.
You just look at this and it's, you got to decide for yourself, but it's almost like, if you're going to fake something, make it a little bit cooler or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And the fact that there's also pictures of it and a lot of eyewitnesses on this thing, and there's a lot more than just like, oh, this is really interesting footage. There's people that have seen it. And
right. And one more thing that I forgot to mention before with the whole pluming at the bottom, when you watch it happen, it almost looks as if it sort of maybe has some thrusters or something, if it is indeed a craft of some kind, that sort of start aiming themselves outward and downward, that sort of produce this pluming, bulbing effect.
Right.
That we're talking about here. But anyways, make sure to check it out.
Yeah, check it out. It's very interesting and compelling.
Amazing UFO footage, 100% real, undeniable evidence.
Which is exactly what I thought when I saw this.
But at number 3 here, we have UFO in Korea.
Yeah, this is kind of a new thing, new footage. And it was posted on April 9th of this year. And so I've never actually heard I don't think I've heard anybody talk about this footage. Could very well be faked. But basically a guy was filming outside of his window on an airplane, as people do. And during his filming of it, he caught something come into view, a little white disc-shaped object, come in and then make a 90-degree turn and just zoom off. And, it could be faked, of course.
Yeah.
But, to me, it looks fairly real.
I'm sorry, keep going.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's really quick, and it just doesn't seem like it would be something that, I don't know. It just doesn't look fake to me. But
right. Well, the thing that I love about this piece of footage is that it's not a piece of light. It's not thousands of miles in the sky. It's not out in space shot by a satellite. It's just a dude on a plane, and what you see is just very much exactly what it looks like. I mean, you see this disc thing, and it's not really obscured. You don't really have to do a whole lot of staring at it to just get a good idea about what it is, and it just comes right in and shoots. Well, no,
it's there from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
So in my estimation, what happened was he saw this thing and he's like, "Whoa, what the heck is that?"
Right.
Pulled out his camera and started filming it.
Right. It's hard to see at first because it sort of blends in with the buildings at the bottom, but I mean, this one's pretty straightforward for me. I mean, if this was going to be faked, it looks like the sort of thing where it would be done with like a model, where you make like a little model of a thing and then you sort of have a string on it and fly it around wherever it is,
It kind of looks like a small white top hat or something when you zoom in really close.
Like a bowler or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and just the way it moves is very consistent with, the way we understand these things to move right now.
In this actual video clip, they slow down the footage and they kind of zoom in. And that's where I think it just can't be faked, because you would see resemblance of tampering if it's CGI. You would see kind of the pixelation change around it and stuff like that. And you just don't get any of it. It just blends in really nicely. It's consistent with the reflection of where the sun allegedly is. And I just think we're going to start seeing more stuff like this as our cameras get more sophisticated and HD and everything else.
That's the great thing, is this footage is only going to start getting better.
Yeah.
As the quality of cameras to the general public gets better. But I mean, there's really is not a lot to discuss about.
No, there
this
really
one.
isn't. You just got to check it out and watch it.
Pretty straightforward UFO footage. Really nice. I mean, nice. I like it for this, for just the fact that you look at it and it is what it is. There's no real interpretation of, photographic anomalies or anything like that involved.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if it is CGI, then they did a great job, because it's
right.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that it's footage that really doesn't have any buzz. And that's another thing that's kind of compelling about it is like, usually when there's video footage that's captured of UFO, like way more obscure than one like this, people go nuts over it and they're like, oh my gosh, look at this footage. This is undeniable proof, 100%. But this one isn't that. I mean, there's like 1,000 hits or something, and it's been out for almost 2 months.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy could simply just been like, it just shows that it's like you can put something out there and not have it be this amazing footage or whatnot, but still be compelling enough. And why would this guy do anything else? Why would he? I mean, it would seem to me that he just posted it because he's like, hey, I caught this weird thing and I just wanted to put it on the internet.
Something like that. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of amazing things, amazing footage, our next one is a pretty old piece of footage, actually.
Yep.
This is from the 50s.
1952. It'll be
Right.
60 years ago.
And again, this might be one that somebody's seen. This, I actually, surprisingly, did not find this one until further into my UFO researching career here. But this is a video of some very strange looking lights, once again in the sort of triangle shape motif, flying over the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. in the middle of the night. And, supposedly this is 60-year-old footage now.
Yeah, and you can't fake this. I keep saying that with like all these footages, but why would? But it would be really hard to fake this in 1952, is what I was trying to say.
Right.
It's just one of those things where it's too eerie to be. I mean, I'm watching it right now, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like 11 or 12 balls of light, and again, they're kind of in that triangular formation. They fly behind the dome in Washington, D.C. And I mean, again, there's not a whole lot you can say about it except for the fact that it's very strange.
Yeah. Well, something I find really interesting about it is, well, first of all, it's very reminiscent of Independence Day.
Oh yeah,
with Will Smith there. It's actually kind of entertaining in that way. But one thing I did want to point out and actually talk about a little bit earlier that I didn't get to is the triangle. Well, I talked about it a little bit, but the triangle formation of that's just so common with these UFO sightings. And I find it very interesting, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the connection between the triangle formation of these UFOs, the obsession with pyramids and triangles of the New World Order, and all the the secret societies and things like that, and the esoteric followers and things like that, and I find that really, really interesting, especially because of the secret society's sort of infatuation with maybe not even necessarily extraterrestrials, but just the bringers of light from the sky, things like that, where the connection is just a little bit eerie. And then when you see the triangles floating over the Capitol building here, it just gives you that much more of an eerie feeling about something going on that we just don't know as much as we'd like to about.
And this footage also in 1952 comes at a time right after World War II, and all the scientists in the Nazi camp were recruited into America to establish or continue some of the technological developments that they were having. It's not even a secret that Hitler was trying to create some kind of UFO-shaped disc craft.
Yeah,
they were trying to tap into that technology. So, in light of all that stuff, it's not a real surprise if you believe that there is. The government does have technology that is far beyond airplanes and jets and things like that. I would not be the least bit surprised. So,
right. Well, and one thing that I find fun about this piece of footage is the pulsating pattern of the lights. Well, first of all, the lights are moving in this precise. They're all moving exactly at the same time. They're just staying right in formation. They don't move at all. But you can tell that they're individual pieces of something.
Right.
And that's always been a very interesting thing about these sort of UFO sightings is the formation that they're in, and they're all just very connected in that they'll move all together.
Yeah,
now,
like an invisible tether keeping them in equal distance apart.
Well, and what I find interesting about this, and especially paired with the pulsating nature of these lights, is it's very reminiscent of the Teslonian sort of harnessing the energy of the ether.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll do a show about this sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
Where just the energy, the electricity that just exists around you, not even necessarily the Thomas Edison version of electricity, and that was a whole battle we'll talk about some other time. But Tesla had just discovered that there's just energy all around us. You could just grab it right out of the air. And it can be used for so many different things that when you harness this energy that's just all around you, it causes some very strange things to happen. Things like anti-gravity and just things like that. And so
it's predicated on vortex. What's it called? I don't have this stuff in front of me, but it's kind of a spin of, in this very same way that when you see spin in the water, or a tornado or something, it creates a vortex of energy.
Right.
The theory behind it is that with Tesla is that, you can tap into this energy source with magnets with a spin cycle and create anomalies in the gravitational force.
It's very interesting. Check it out.
We'll get into that in a whole.
But anyways,
episode.
that's what's expected that these UFOs use for some sort of propulsion. They don't use a jet fuel or something. They don't use a fuel because there's no emissions left from these things.
Right.
But it's suspected that they use this sort of technology that sort of harnesses the energy around them and just lets them just move wherever they really want to move. They don't have to keep any momentum to catch airflow or anything because they don't rely on that. They just rely on this sort of anti-gravity that exists around harnessing this energy. And so with that being said, the way that these things move and the way that these things seem to be sort of tethered together and the way that they pulsate really echo that sort of technology, And this being, 60 years ago, that was sort of at the time where the really, really heavy research was being put on this sort of thing, because there's that sort of, what is the word, infatuation with figuring out what was happening with these UFOs.
Right. And it sounds like UFOs coming to get you right now in the background.
Yeah, they're just always buzzing around.
Well, let's go to the last one here. This is we labeled this number 1, and ironically enough, it is not a UFO footage. But it is footage that is most likely fake. But we wanted to actually talk about that because we feel that it is important to even discuss the fake footage. So this is of Skinny Bob, which is an alleged alien gray that was captured. What is it, during Roswell? What is this from?
Yeah, this is from Roswell, and there's there's been a lot of talk about Skinny Bob throughout the years, and aliens like him, where he was held in Roswell and sort of helped us with certain things like the nuclear bomb and lasers and things like this that us normal people don't really have the education to sort of comprehend.
The mental capacity, because obviously Skinny Bob's got a head that's the size that is 3 times the size of ours.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure how he got that turtleneck on, but it's very interesting. Check it out here. It's whoever did it did a very good job. It's sort of in this black and white, sort of crummy looking. I'm
sorry, I'm still laughing about the turtleneck. Sorry, that's just really funny. Okay, go on. Sorry.
It's so good. That's basically it, and it's very compelling. I mean, when I saw this, I first just wanted to believe it so badly, but it's demonstrably obvious that it's not, just because the movement that you get with an 8mm footage is sort of this jerky, sort of a lot of times sped up a little bit, just because of the just how it works usually with that sort of film, because it's not digital and things like that, and you have to get this speed just exactly right on the camera, and you have to match it to the projector and things like that. And you watch this alien sort of move about, and it's just way too fluid, just much too fluid to be on a 8mm film. And sort of the way it blinks and sort of the way it moves its arms and things are very well done for whoever was doing the animation, but just isn't quite there. It's almost like they could have taken a little bit more. And who knows? I might be one of these naysayers right now, and this could be real. And look at me. I'm one of the naysayers
Right.
that I talk about all the time. So, yeah, but I think it's pretty widely accepted that this Skinny Bob footage is not real. And you can look around, and there's actually a lot of other Skinny Bob footage or footage of other aliens. Some are really funny. Some are just, guys just plastered in latex because they were shot back in the 50s, and that's just what they had to work with back then.
Right.
Things like that. But
yeah, it's one of those things that it's kind of like the 1952 what was it 50s the War of the Worlds broadcast,
Right.
where people thought that it was an actual real UFO or alien.
back when people actually trusted what they heard on the media.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I thought was was interesting and actually caught my attention with this video during the few minutes where I thought it might be real was the depiction of Skinny Bob's face. It's a little bit more human than we're used to seeing. The shape of the eyes, the nose, the
cheek area.
The cheek area and the lips and the chin, almost like the bottom half of his whole head, is a little bit more human than we're used to expecting. And this, to me, made me think like, oh, look, this is like, could be the actual version of what we have sort of alienized and made look really, really funky. It may have originally looked a little bit more human than we expected. And it just sort of, makes you think about it in a little bit more real terms. But that doesn't take away from the sad, sad truth that this most likely is not real footage of an extraterrestrial, whether it be the traditional alien that we like to think or more of a metaphysical being.
Yeah, and way to go for us to end it on a downer fake.
I know. Seriously.
So all that time we were building up to number one, and number one is a complete fake video.
Hey, they were in no specific order except for maybe this one. But I think we need to talk about a little bit, just because we spent so much time on aliens and UFOs. Just talk a little bit about, what we think aliens could be, what the possibilities are. There's talk about, are they extraterrestrials? Are they interdimensional? Or are they sort of more of a metaphysical being?
Yeah, there's so much that could be said in that topic. J. Allen Hynek believes that these things, there's a huge cover-up. There's a quote by him that says, "If the government has been covering up Watergate, then their handling of UFOs is a cosmic Watergate." He just totally believes that there is something that is being completely covered up by the government. There is an increased acceptance by the public of the possibility of there being life on other planets or other, mostly other planets. This is how it's advertised in the mainstream. But in the 1970s, even more than 57% of people believe that they're extraterrestrials. And I have a poll in the Video Age of Deceit that shows over, I think it was like 84% of people between the age of 18 and 24 believe that we're not alone. And so it's a very common belief now that the common argument I hear is, we're so arrogant to think that we are the only beings out there when the universe has billions of galaxies and trillions of solar systems, and how could we ever say that there's not life on other planets? And I think it's very important for us to talk about a couple different things. One, the fact that as a Christian, to say that, all these are demonic does not negate the possibility of life on other planets. In fact, the premise or the assertion that these things are coming from a different dimension and that they are spiritual in nature and that they probably don't have our best interest in mind. Those are all conclusions that have been arrived from the investigation of what happens here on Earth as far as the visual, testimonies and videos of UFOs, but also the alien abduction phenomenon of people experiencing these things. Because what people tend to do is to put two and two that don't fit together. They'll say, oh, these people had an alien abduction experience and they said that the aliens were from, another galaxy. Therefore, it must be a phenomenon that's happening from another galaxy. And that's not necessarily the case. So, again, you have to understand that the evidence that we see does not necessarily point directly to, there being actual extraterrestrials or not.
Because if there was going to be a sort of a great deception, them being from another planet would be the perfect cover-up for being more of a being of spiritual nature, sort of a demon or something of that in that realm.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dig into this with L.A. Marzulli, which is our guest coming up here. But it's interesting how a lot of the aliens in the last century have moved further and further away of like where they're from. Because in the beginning, as people started getting these channelings or these experiences, these aliens were from Mars. Then they found Mars and they're like, oh, there's nothing there. And they're like, oh, I mean, we're from Uranus. Well, well, there's nothing on Uranus either. Well, oh, actually, we're from the Pleiades star system.
Right.
So they just keep moving further and further away.
Right, and if nothing else, it's just very suspicious.
Yeah, there's just no consistency, even within the people that claim to have gotten messages of the various aspects of, usually they talk about God or they talk about Jesus or which is another interesting point, is like if they're coming from billions of light years away, why is the first thing they talk about Jesus? That's seriously a big thing that I saw that was like, really, that is really interesting.
Right. And if you look at them in the New Age sort of realm, these aliens are always sort of the saviors or the great bringers of knowledge and things like this. And I mean, I've actually seen illustrations of like an alien with like a halo and sort of like depicted like Jesus or something like that. Like they are the real messiahs coming down to help out the human race.
Right.
And which is just another part of the Great Deception that has been going on for thousands of years.
Yeah, and there's different kinds of encounters. There's obviously the first kind, which is basically sightings or seeing unidentified objects. Then the close encounters of the second kind, which is not just seeing the UFO close quarters, but actually like getting physical records of it. Leaving scorched grass or interference with electrical circuits or different physical effects on people. People have talked about getting headaches and things like that. And then the third kind, which is, it starts getting pretty bizarre, is, actually seeing the humanoid beings.
Itself.
Yeah. Like actually, either deliberately or not having contact with, those entities. And so, and with all of them, there is a strange connection with the historical records of demon attacks, demon possession,
right?
With these
sort of fear and paralysis that comes from encounters with the demonic is oddly similar to the accounts given by people who have come in contact with extraterrestrials.
Right. So, a lot of this video and all the footage and wanting to believe, it's not a matter of wanting to believe whether aliens are real or not. And I certainly was, I think when I first started, I think a lot of people, when they start looking into this, it's because they want so badly for answers as far as there being aliens out there, because that means that we're not alone. That means that, there's all sorts of implications of, we're not the smartest. There's hope.
Yeah. Well, I think that more than anything, I think it gives people hope.
Yeah.
If there's knowledge of something being out there who's smarter than us and has done a better job than us, at getting things together and protecting the planet and things like this, I think it gives a lot of people hope. And I think that's the biggest part of the whole thing, that is, if it is, some sort of great deception, that it's doing a very good job. It's putting people's faith in these extraterrestrials and putting people's actions. People make physical, life choices based on the thought that there are smarter beings out there who want to help us, who are trying to help us, but we aren't necessarily letting them in to help us, or something like that.
Yeah, and the thing that really was part of my journey of getting to where I am today with all this stuff is that it really gave me a choice. It gave me a choice to put faith in these alleged entities that may or may not exist, or in a potentially even a higher entity of God, of the creator of everything, all of this. And there's really, the biblical narrative and the whole Christian perspective of prophecy and all this stuff, it really does talk about spiritual deception and spiritual beings engaging with the human race in some form or another. And it's happened in the past, and it's allegedly going to happen to some aspect or some way in the future. And so a lot of the things that were not necessarily talked about in your Sunday school or your churches, those parts of the Bible started to make sense to me. And it really showed me that not only is this phenomenon most likely part of the Great Deception, but it is also something that is going to really change the paradigm of people when it does come out into the open. And I mean, think about what's the one thing that could really create a one world government, in a sense that people want a one world government. Or one world religion that ties into the one world government. An ET disclosure would shatter in the minds of many people on this planet. It would shatter the paradigm of religious barriers, of different agnosticism about all sorts of topics. It would just shatter it, especially if they're supposedly more intelligent beings than us, and they have kept monitor on us, and they'll tell us that they created us, or whatever the case may be, whatever.
Well, that's the thing. An extraterrestrial or whatever, an alien could come down, could tell us anything, and we would believe him.
Exactly.
If you put one on the nightly news and he comes out and he says, we created you, we've been watching you, we're here to help, so everybody listen up, we got some things to change. The whole world would be ready to just do whatever was requested of them by this being. And so, there's nothing to lead me to believe that that's what is going to happen or what, but it's very possible. And I think it might be valuable to them, the fact that it is so unexpected, even for those of us who should be or would expect something like that. Even if one came down and started talking and came out on the nightly news and was shaking hands with Obama, I would be blown away, and it would be tempting for me to listen to what it had to say. And you know what I mean?
And biblically, what it talks about is that there's going to be a deception that's so strong that it may even deceive the elect. The people that are supposed to know that it's a deception, it may even deceive them.
Right.
That's a really, really strong deception. And, I've always wanted to see a UFO, and I've seen things that are very strange in the sky. They may or may not have been UFOs. I don't know. UFOs in the sense that, they're crafts or something.
They were unidentified.
They were unidentified.
Flying, yeah. They were objects.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. So maybe I did see UFO, but I don't know if it was well, anyway.
Right.
I've seen things and I was mesmerized by them and I wanted to see more. And that's just human nature. We just tend to gravitate towards things we don't understand, and we want to know more about them. And so when that faucet of knowledge is released all of a sudden into the mainstream populace, it's going to do some big things. And it's going to be tough. I hear you when you say that. Even you'd be curious. I mean, I would be curious too. I'd be like, wow, this is this is something else. The UFO landing on the White House lawn, or whatever the case may be. And we'll get into this a lot more with LA. He's done a lot more research, extensive research on this topic for a lot longer than even we've been around probably. But I would close with the fact that if you are someone who is still hung up on what these beings might be, and you're unwilling to take a consideration of the Christian perspective, or the biblical perspective, I guess you can say, because the Christian perspective isn't necessarily coherent on many topics, but at least a biblical perspective on this topic, you will come to find that it ties up a lot of loose ends.
Right. It just makes so much sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And the spiritual entities that these beings allegedly are, they're the same entities that are providing the information, the instruction for the New World Order, for the One World Government, for all the conspiracies that we see with the stuff in the food and the water and all these things that are happening. It starts from somewhere, and it starts from the spiritual world. And we can, obviously, this is a whole nother topic that we can get into, but it's the world is run by the fallen cherub and his the people that, or the beings that do his bidding. And those are what I've labeled the fallen angels. And a lot of people have labeled them the fallen angels, and they're the ones in charge. And the common misconception is that these fallen angels are simply these ethereal kind of, hokey pokey, spiritual things. But I would say that they are very technologically advanced. They understand the nature of our material world very well. And so when things like 1948 and Roswell happen, or 47, it's no surprise to think that they are giving information about advanced knowledge and advanced technology to our leaders of the world, in order to deceive not just our leaders, because they're deceived too. We often demonize the New World Order and the leaders of the Illuminati and things like that, but in reality, they're the most deceived people, because we're all in the same boat. We're all brothers and sisters, but they're the ones that are being really deceived to try to do the bidding of the fallen cherub. So anyway.
Right. So, yeah, make sure to tune in next week for our time with L.A. Marzulli, and we'll definitely get a lot deeper into this with ETs and UFOs and really their metaphysical possibilities, and it's just promises to be just very fascinating conversation with him.
And I think it's interesting because the topic of UFOs and aliens and stuff, it's been talked about a lot. It's been talked about, a lot with like Coast to Coast and, all sorts of different shows and radio stations and videos and things like that. But oddly enough, there's really not a whole lot of people in the Christian community that even acknowledge the possibility or the phenomenon in general.
Right.
And that's why I think LA is going to be a cool guest, because he's one of those guys that he's out there. I mean, he's talking about it. He's got his perspective. He gets ridiculed all the time and, called a fearmonger and stuff like that, which is nothing new. But yeah, definitely check that out. It's going to be cool.
Guaranteed to be an awesome show next week, so make sure to tune in. But thanks again for tuning in today. Make sure to check us out on Twitter at Canary Cry Radio. Check us out on Facebook. Go ahead and search Canary Cry Radio. Make sure to stop by the website. If you're not already there watching the videos now, do that. Leave a comment, say hi. Make sure to send us an email at canarycryradio@gmail.com or hit the contact tab on the website there. We love hearing from you guys. We love getting into conversations, ask questions, things like that.
Oh yeah, and real quick before we wrap it up here, we did throw a little donation button on the website. And do you want to just jive on that for a second? I mean,
Oh,
we're not going
yeah,
to spend
sure.
too much time on it, but just to inform you guys.
Yeah, right. Well, yep, there are operating costs to the website, and that's no big deal. Shoot. Okay, edit this.
Okay.
Um,
Willing.
yeah, willing. That's the thing. We are definitely willing to be supporting this site, and it's something we love, and it's something we are going to keep doing no matter what. But if by any chance any of you feel led, if the Lord's telling you to help us out at all, the donation button is there for expenses and things like that, and maybe get a microphone for me so we don't have to listen to the airplanes flying by. And
Basil
things
needs
like
a
that.
microphone really bad, man. I really want to get him one, but
So don't freak out when you see it. Don't freak out we're mentioning it. I know a lot of people are going to be shouting sell out, but
they
that's not
sold
really
out,
different.
man.
If we start putting ad space for Target and Swiffer wet jets, then I give you my full permission to start criticizing us for that. But no, so no worries. If the Lord is working on your heart right now, that's there. It is a gift, and it's not tax deductible, unfortunately. But
We're not anything official yet. So
That's right. We're not an official. I don't know.
We're
What
not an
is it,
official
nonprofit or
organization
something?
or nonprofit or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's
right.
there if you feel led. So, thanks again, guys, for listening, and be sure definitely to check in next week for LA Marzulli, CanaryCryRadio.com.
Later.